Right. I want to ask you about that because we were talking the other day and I said, well, what do you want to talk about? And you said, well, I think I finally truly understand dialectics.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you, for someone who I think I know what dialectics are. I've thought I've known about it, but it made me realize, maybe I don't. Can you tell me, Matt Christman, what are dialectics and why are you suddenly having this epiphany about them? Because it sounds like it's one of those things about Marxism that falling rate of profit or whatever that we can just like forget about.
It's true because people forget about it. The reason they forget about it is because they can't think about it long enough to make it make sense. They get bored or they hit like their ratiocination limit. Either, and it's usually not one or the other, it's a combination of both. You hit your brain's natural ability to absorb the symbolic meaning, and you also lose your ability to withhold pleasure long enough to keep figuring it out, and then you give up. And that's what I did, and that's what most people do at some point at almost everything they believe. And what I realized is that the dialectic was one of those things, a dead concept that I understood some of the implications of and applied as needed, but that I did not understand the foundation of. I did not understand the whole contours of. And I feel like I have slipped into a process that has taken me my entire life, but also is punctuated by specific, like, Satori moments that I now understand the dialect not as a dead concept, but as a tool of thought, which is the spiritual replica of the physical engine of matter, the thing that literally causes the Big Bang and causes all matter to fire off and obeys the laws of thermodynamics until all matter is extinguished. That same force that is within all matter is within our brains in the form of dialectical concepts being arrayed against each other until we arrive at a new combination of the forces that we brought together in conflict.
But let's apply this. So
basically what I'm saying is I understand dialectics to a degree of specificity of metaphor that I am fully convinced. I now, because of that, feel that I can explain it to other people at a much higher degree of competence than I used to be able to, but not fully.
Right.
So but one of the on a scale, because all yes/no questions are both yes/no, but also on a scale of rightness at all times. I understand dialectics at a deeper level of symbolism than I did before. At least I feel that. And what that has gotten me is to the point where I understand that I cannot explain to you. I would be defeated by the task of trying to explain it to you as a concept, because that's my brain. It taxes my brain too much. What I can do is apply it to specific questions and then show you through example.
Okay, then let's go through example, because you were explaining to me that dialectics is the antithesis. A dialectical understanding of politics is the antithesis of the understanding of left politics that permeates in Twitter.
Yes.
Okay, explain what you mean by that.
Because they come from different. They are motivated by different theories of the self. There is a liberal subject. Okay. Now, we're all liberal subjects to some extent. We are liberal subjects to the extent that we accept liberal principles. First liberal principle is there are other people around me. They're roughly equivalent to me in some way. Like we are categoried together, and everything else works from that. That's the initial liberal subject, the one that recognizes an other. That's step one of liberalism. We are all liberal subjects. There are non-liberal subjects in the world. The Sinhalese tribesmen that kill everybody who comes near them, I bet, are not liberal subjects. Most of us in the world by now are, to some degree or another, liberal subjects with that as our baseline of understanding of ourselves and ourselves. We understand ourselves in relationship to someone else that we recognize as similar but different. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay. But wait a minute.
Okay.
Oh, continue.
I was going to say, so even under you're basically saying in America, even Trump is fundamentally
everyone is.
We all
Karl Marx is because he was born after the liberal subject became hegemonic in Europe. He was a liberal subject to that extent. Okay. Now take a guy like Chomsky. He is admitted that he is in the liberal tradition and that anarchism is in the liberal tradition. It is. He believes in the liberal subject, which is a subject that is a non-moved upon mover, that is a identity that is independent of outside influence to some extent and can operate independently by itself. That's the liberal subject. And having that fully formed liberal subject making decisions, they're going to make certain category errors. That is why Chomsky erroneously tells people it's their moral duty to vote Democrat every election, because he's only looking at it through that axis. Now, Marx was a liberal subject to the extent that he recognized himself as in opposition to other people. But because he was smart enough, his brains worked the right way, and he found himself in the time and place to observe both up close and in patterns, industrial capitalism being born, he could come at it from outside of it. And that means that he could press this new reality of industrial capitalism against his pre-existing liberal self through actions and thoughts coming from actions, and then arrive at a new understanding. That says that there is no unmoved self. The dialectical self is just a process. The dialectical spirit, the brain, everything we think of as a soul is not a thing in itself. It is a process that produces something.
Then let's take that.
Creates a different anchoring for your next level of decision-making trees.
So let's get dialectical on what happened in the past few months and what's about to happen. What can we what is it that we're failing to understand because our brains are this mush in this social media generated political understanding of what's going on? How can being more dialectical, which I honestly just saying that I can't believe I'm saying it, what can we learn that we're not learning now about apply to the specific things? Like we were talking about how Twitter is all about oh my God, this guy said this bad thing. Everything he says is garbage.
It's about reifying distinctions rather than bringing them together.
Right. And he's refusing to accept that someone who might repulse you might have a point. Because
the thing is, they are not. Here's the thing: everyone is right and wrong simultaneously in equal measure. I am right. Everything I've been right about, I've been wrong about at an equal time because at a different place in time, what I thought and what activated my actions and what helped me make the world isn't true anymore.
Right.
So you have to start from the idea that everyone is wrong, including you, about everything. And first, that makes it easier to argue because you don't get mad. You literally, like everyone on Twitter, the whole thing is getting someone else mad because you're literally trying to get somebody to the point where they stop trying to reason with why they think what they think and respond with hostility because they have been made to feel an emotion, because they've got pent up frustration because they have not worked through the problem. And you're
I'm not mad. This is funny to me.
And so the madder you are, basically, if you're madder, it means objectively you understand your position less, meaning you're wronger. And it's yeah, that's true. But if you don't care if you're wrong, if you embrace that you're wrong about everything, then that shit flows through you and you do not respond angrily, which means you don't get distracted and you work the question out to the root, or closer to the root than anyone you're talking to.
Okay, then that gives me to my next question, which is, let's do a little self-criticism. What were we wrong about in the past, let's say 2-3 years? What did we get wrong? And I mean you and me, or either one. I mean,
if I want to go, here's the thing though, you have to contextualize them in space and time. So you can't just say this when, you have to say this then. Like I would say and this is why it's so hard to talk about history and ascribe morality to history, because you want to be, you don't want to be presentist, but you want to give moral suasion. And the way you do that is you accept at some level of intuition that all actions in life are fully determined by physical circumstance like billiard balls, but also that every person has absolute freedom to choose in the moment that they choose. Those are both true at the same time. So that means the me who chooses to start Chapo, he cannot make a different choice anymore. His choice is remade reality. Like I'm here instead of there. I have items here. I have created things. Things exist because of that decision and those things he made. Those can't be undone. So I cannot look back and say he did the wrong thing because I wouldn't be here if he hadn't done it. I can say he chose wrong at the time, which is a different question.
Then let's say that. Let's just say that what did we get right and were we blind? I won't say wrong. What were we blind to?
I will say what at the most, like trying to be helpful with these concepts, the most purely, because like the dialectic is more, the deeper you get, the easier it is to handle because the symbols mean more, because you're at a higher deep level of like understanding between the people talking. And then it gets less complicated as you go up. And so you have to talk about it more. Anyway, what was it? I've already lost my track. What was I saying?
Okay. Let me just, I'm gonna make it like, I'll be really specific here.
Oh, not the things we made, the mistakes we made. Okay.
Yeah. What mistakes, what did we get right
perfect.
and what did we miss? Because I talked to you about this before.
At the macro, I'm sorry, I just got to.
Go ahead. No,
I don't actually. I don't have to get it out. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I was going to say like, in some ways, I think we talked about this right after Super Tuesday. We never liked Warren. We always thought it was bad that she was running, but in a weird way, it was actually so much worse than any of us thought at the time. And what did we miss about this kind of force of the like affluent progressive PMC? Did we underrate their influence? Or, I mean, she didn't win. She didn't win a single state, but she did enough damage.
We failed to evaluate a few things correctly. I think the one thing that we honestly, those of us who, I guess there's two things you could have overestimated, I think, given what actually ended up happening. You could overestimate her importance to the process, which I think a lot of people did at all times, and that warped their relationship to her one way or the other, because she was never as influential or as threatening as she appeared. She was always a character who was going to float between two poles and just go and not ever, and basically be dissolved between them and never like overcome the other ones, because she just started from a smaller base. She just started from a smaller base, and over time it just ground down. It didn't expand. So we didn't get that would happen. We didn't get the softness of the support, I guess, the softness of the stone of the Warren support. So that was one way to mistake it, the material way. The other way to mistake them, which a lot of us did, I think I did to some extent, was the degree to which they were gettable, the degree to which they were on the right side because of their accepting of progressive points of view. I personally never really bought very hard that these people, when push came to shove, would embrace socialism over Democratic Party discipline. But I thought there was a chance. I think a lot of people thought there was more of a chance than I did. And it turns out that we were all overestimating the chance there was. And the thing is that the reason that I think I more correctly than some rated her degree of or her degree of earnestness and her supporters' degree. I was like, I don't really buy that these people are all just socialists who have gone astray. I think most of them are not good. But there are a few. But the thing is, there were a few who you could tell are just going along because they didn't want to get yelled at, or they thought they were solving some problem. They were triangulating off the bros. But at the end of the day, if you got rid of her, they would go for Bernie. Well, all that energy spent on her was wasted because I fundamentally misapprehended her actual importance to the process. She ended up being a sort of the last gasp of a dying segment of the electorate that is losing influence.